Welcome to Wisdom for Nonprofits, bringing the best business wisdom to the nonprofit world. Proven leaders share their experience, insights, and best practices. Finally, a podcast for the busy nonprofit professional. And now, your trusted advisor, Bettina Meyer-Flug.
Most nonprofits don't have the expertise and resources they need to run the business part of the organization. Normally, they are founded by experts for their mission work. That means they really know how to provide service related to their mission, and they really know how to support their constituents. But the majority of the time, they struggle into solving finances, HR, fundraising, and even board problems. On this episode, I'll be talking with Judy Siegel, the founder of Big Change Consulting, an organization specialized to help solve these problems for nonprofits. They have helped several organizations start up, gear up, and clean up their operation, HR, and fundraising. Jody Siegel has been helping nonprofits organizations for the past 25 years. She has built several strong and successful programs in local, state, and national organizations. She's known by designing streamlined solutions that last. Also, a passion about partnering with leaders to solve operation challenge so they can focus on the critical work of fulfilling their mission. Before founding Big Change Consulting, Judy was deputy director at the Ohio Environment Council. During her 13-year tenure there, she built their development department, oversaw marketing and communications, and led administrative, finance, and HR and special projects. She has also helped successful development operation roles at organizations in Massachusetts and California. Jody lives in Central Ohio, but she helps organizations overall United States. So I'm very happy to have her here today with me. Welcome, Jody, and thank you for being our podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, Bettina.
So let's start talking a little bit about your journey into the nonprofit world. What brought you 25 years ago to this nonprofit world?
Well, this is actually where I always wanted to be. So even as a kid and then as a college student, my goal was to work for social change. I wanted to have an impact on communities, increase justice where I had the ability to do so. And so nonprofit organizations for me was the best way to do it. I thought about, should I become a lawyer? Should I join the Peace Corps and do service? And found that working as a nonprofit employee for organizations making change was where I wanted to spend my time and have my career.
That's so nice. And what was the first contact with nonprofits that you had and your role? I know that you have a lot of experience in administrative, finance, HR, but how did you start it?
My first job was as a fellow with the Massachusetts Public Interest Research Group, which is now also Environment Massachusetts. So this is an organization that had been around for probably about 30 years at that point. And my job was to increase recycling access, to reduce waste in the state of Massachusetts. So I was lobbying, holding press conferences, serving as a policy expert. And I found very quickly that it was really important work that I wanted to be part of, but that wasn't the right route for me within the organization because spending time as a lobbyist wasn't the perfect fit for me. I more wanted to be with activists and donors and staff that were sharing in the mission interest that I had.
That's cool. And then you have a lot of experience in all those four areas that you're going to talk, but let's start talking about finances. What are the major problems you see nonprofits are facing in regards to finance?
So nonprofit financial management is extraordinarily complicated. You know, from the outside, it might look really pretty easy, or if you've run a business, it might seem like you would know how to do it. But there are so many requirements and so many audiences and so much information that needs to be tracked that it is exceptionally complicated. And so because nonprofit organizations especially ones that are smaller than like a very large institution, are almost all led by people who have expertise in their mission area. They almost never have leadership that has expertise in financial management. And so that leads to misunderstandings, that leads to not investing enough resources, that leads to confusion, that leads to potentially making decisions that aren't in the strategic interest of the organization. So I find that having some expert help when you need it can help reduce those headaches and can help make you a lot more efficient without having to have full-time expertise on your staff. Because you really do need a lot of different levels of help when it comes to financial management. You need folks that can do the more clerical work, like entering contributions or entering expenses into your QuickBooks or other financial software. And then you need folks that can help at a big picture strategic level, can negotiate with the board, can advise on how to do really interesting but long-term thinking and unwrap complicated problems. So by finding resources at different levels, maybe you have that bookkeeping junior staff person on staff, but you may need occasionally to find the right expert to help you with the more complicated parts. Then we can either help you with that or help you find the right person to work with on that area.
I totally agree. I think having a big picture vision is super important for anyone who's running a nonprofit. And in my consulting with nonprofits the past years, what I saw so far, not all the nonprofits, they have a provision for future problems. We recently faced COVID, and I was happy to know that several of the nonprofits that I helped, they had some funds available to survive for a full year if something happened to them, but not all the organizations have that. So how does your support help nonprofits create this buffer, like this financial security?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that buffer is usually called an operating reserve. And the terms that people use to describe an operating reserve is number of months that you have set aside. So the idea is if you had no more money coming in, but you still needed to do your mission work, how long could you survive that way? For 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's most common for organizations to try to have between 3 and 6 months of operating reserve sitting in the bank. So a quarter to half of your entire budget set aside for the rainy day. And that's a lot. And so if you're able to add to that when times are financially good and the stock market is up, which means donors are more generous, grantors have more money to give away, and then you can use some of that strategic operating reserve when times are tighter to maintain your staffing level, to allow you to have some buffer in taking risk, to protect you in case there is some type of downturn or funding change, then that's a really good way to go about doing that. So we can help advise on those conversations.
Great, great. It's super important. Let's jump into the topic HR. I think due to new regularization, we do have a podcast where we talk about the new laws for COVID, but big changes always happen. Now it's hard to retain employees. What are the problems that you are seeing nonprofits facing nowadays in HR?
Yeah, so HR to me is a whole bunch of different things put together in one big umbrella. So you have benefits like your health insurance and retirement. You have administrative work like processing your payroll. You have recruitment services that you might need to do to find employees and onboard them and offboard them. And you also have staff management. So those different areas require really different skill sets and have really different support needs. Some of them are clerical, some of them are technical, some of them are managerial. And so again, similar to the financial management, it's really hard to have internal expertise that can help you with all of those situations. And they also can be really sensitive. And so you might not have the opportunity to talk to other staff. You might need to have somebody confidential external to talk to. So that's a resource. But the kinds of things that come up frequently right now are that organization leaders and employees aren't happy with their benefits. They're not really giving their staff as much service or as good of health plans as they want, or they're not happy with how expensive they are. Um, a lot of organizations are taking a hard look at how they work in terms of a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And that's really important through HR of how are the employer and employees working together. How are you investing in employees? How are you recruiting and retaining staff? How are you treating people fairly? And then there are a number of different challenges that come up just with staff management in general. I repeatedly run into situations where there is a performance issue and the manager has not really addressed it along the way or given the employee what they need in order to do a good job. And so we talk about something we call the cycle of accountability that says before you hold an employee accountable for doing something that or not doing something the way that you want, you have to make sure that they had the training. Do they know exactly what it is they're expected to do? Do they have clear deadlines? Do they have clear information? Did you provide opportunities to ask questions? Then you can talk about did they do it the way that you're expecting.
So that means you can help also organization create the onboarding process when they hire someone. How important is this onboarding process and setting clear expectations on what you want from your new employee?
That is a huge question and a really big issue because the reason that staff leave isn't over bits and pieces. The reason that staff leave is because they don't feel trusted. They don't feel like their organization or their supervisor is investing in them. And so making sure that you are really clear about what the job is and who the people at the organization are will help make sure that you are recruiting folks that are a good fit and you're less likely to have turnover. And then being clear about how the systems work, making sure that your decision making is as open and equitable as possible, helps to recruit and retain good employees. And then having really good benefits, treating people well, giving them opportunities to learn and grow and take leadership roles helps folks want to stay around and do a much better job than if they're in an environment where they don't feel like they are valued. And that all goes back to the expectations and onboarding.
And it's super tied up to the first part of what we were talking, the financial part. So if you have the provision, if you have the financial stability, if you have planned, for example, to invest in trainings for your employees, once you implement a new software, for example, or even if they want to get better in a different field, because in nonprofits, I always say people wear different hats. So you have to have one employee that's responsible for fundraising, at the same time they're responsible for administrative things. So providing opportunities for them to grow is essential, but you have to plan in advance all your financial part to be able to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it really, if your administrative systems and your financial systems are in place, it's so much less frustrating for staff because staff want to work really hard. They want to do a great job. They care about the mission. That's why they're there. And so if there are roadblocks in front of them, it's frustrating. If they have to jump through hoops to get reimbursed for a meal, it's really disrespectful and makes them feel unvalued. And so if you can smooth out your admin, if you can give people control of their budgets, if you can be responsive to folks, that helps with staff retention. If you have clarity in your budget and stability in your finances, you have the opportunity to invest in your staff. And all of those pieces, like you're saying, I agree, they all fit together to having a well-run organization. And if it's not a well-run organization, you can't do your mission work. So you really do need these pieces in place in order to, and have them run well. Otherwise, staff are frustrated, you can't plan, things don't run smoothly, and then staff who have expertise in program work and who should be spending time doing program work and fundraising get pulled into these operational problems.
I agree. And talking about having the right structure in place, how do you help the nonprofits with systems? For example, if they need a system to run their organization, what kind of support can you help them?
Well, it starts with listening. And so I'll ask questions like, what are your pain points? What's going on? What's wrong? What's working well? And then often through those conversations, which I call diagnosing, can really hear what the underlying issues are. So sometimes it really is just a technical issue that they have a service provider that's not serving them very well, or they need to learn about a new program, or they want to take advantage of something. And so it might be matching them up with a vendor that we trust and has done a good job for our other clients. It could be answering questions and advising how to solve that problem. But I would say more than half of the time, there's some type of underlying issue that needs to be addressed. There is a lack of trust within the organization. There's lack of clarity between roles. There's lack of communication of a vision. The board doesn't understand what their role is versus what the staff role is. The managers aren't giving clear direction to employees, and employees aren't getting feedback that's useful. So really having a good conversation and asking questions is really useful. The second thing that we do in addition to the diagnosing conversations is to do an operational assessment. So we have a long list of things that are often issues for nonprofit organizations, some of which can be solved very quickly. Oh, here's you do some lobbying and you're a 501c3. I recommend that you complete an IRS form called a 501h election, which raises the amount of lobbying you can do. It takes a minute to do. There's no fee. It's automatic. Great. Problem solved. Some items on this checklist will identify bigger issues that will take some time to unravel. And then we work with the organization to prioritize. So we're here in support. It's their decision of what they want to prioritize. We absolutely will give our opinions, and I am full of unsolicited advice. But it's ultimately their decision if they want to work in some area or another, how much time they want to spend.
Yeah, that's great. And as I hear from you, it's super important communication between team members. This is one of the main pillars of a successful organization, isn't it?
It is, because depending on the kind of organization it is, a lot of the work actually is communication. So there are some organizations that deliver services. And so they're moving goods, they are coordinating things that might be actual physical, like a food bank, for example, or a shelter. They have physical items in space that they're working in. But a lot of organizations work in a different way, which they are sharing information. And so let's say you're trying to make a change in a policy, you're trying to educate people. Those are very much communication organizations. So the first example where you have resources you're trying to move absolutely requires communication to make sure it's done efficiently and you're not losing products, you're not diverting things, you're not slowing down, you're not wasting resources to move things from one place to another or to provide those resources. And then the second example, that's essentially a communications organization like an advocacy group. Everything they do is communication.
And when we're talking about HR, we have to consider as well the volunteers. The volunteers are a big part of the workforce of many organizations. How do you address the issues that nonprofits face with volunteers?
Well, if somebody has a lot of issues with volunteer management and they want a volunteer system, this is a place where we would find or recommend other consultants and services that have a specialty there. So part of what we do is to recognize where we have expertise and where we don't have expertise. And volunteer management is, We've done some of it, but that is not where our deep expertise is, and others are going to be better at that. So we would help to identify other potential connections for them. But then a lot of things related to volunteers are similar that they would be for an employee. So maybe the organization has a lot of volunteers, but they have no clear policy. So a volunteer drives somewhere, do they get reimbursed for those miles? What rate do they do? What form did they use? So we can help with those types of things. That would be basic infrastructure and HR related programs and systems for the organization and their volunteers.
And I bet also the onboarding process, because since you help create the onboarding process for employees, is the same engagement process that you do for volunteers, isn't it?
Yes, it could be very similar. So they won't go onto payroll and have to do some of those pieces, but in terms of orienting to the organization and how to work within the organization, absolutely. But when it comes to recruitment of volunteers, engagement of volunteers, that's more programmatic. That's about doing the mission. That's where we would suggest other potential contacts that might be helpful.
And what can you say about fundraising that could help our listeners to better organize their fundraising and be structured in this area?
Yeah, this is a exciting area to talk about. A lot of people are scared of fundraising, but it's actually really a fun thing to be involved in. So first, I would say is that most of fundraising is not fundraising. So the raising of dollars for your organization is mostly relationship building and information gathering and sharing your good work and thanking, all of those pieces that aren't asking for money. Everybody can be involved in fundraising and everybody should be involved, whether that is doing a good job at your mission. And if somebody's excited about it, saying, you know what, we could use your help, or participating in an event where you show off your work and somebody else is making an introduction, or somebody else is thanking, or somebody else is inviting them to participate. So that's my first bet, is everybody can be involved in that cycle of philanthropy. The second is before you can figure out and raise those dollars, you need to think about who it is that you want to talk to and how you want to talk to them. So we've built a model that we call the Grants Accelerator, which you can really adapt to being a fundraising accelerator. And it's a pyramid that shows the building blocks below getting to fundraising at the top. And so knowing what you're talking about includes doing some pieces of strategic planning. So the first step is a logic model, and that gives you a very big picture of the theory of change for your organization. What is the problem you're looking to solve? How will you solve it? And then mapping your way through it. And that's going to last a very long time. Then creating a strategic plan that's maybe 2 or 3 years of internal and external activities. So that could be mission accomplishments. It could be organization building. Then on the side of who you're talking to is doing research of potential funders. And so on the grant side, that could be doing a grant strategy assessment. On the donor side, that could be brainstorming with key leaders and staff in the organization to figure out who are folks that might be interested in your work, and then doing an assessment of how ready you are to go out and do that fundraising. So we can look at how well packaged and put together your programs are, how clear your board is, and how impressive that might be to a funder, and some other pieces. And then putting those pieces together in a case for support. So how to talk to your potential donors about the work you have identified, and then moving into creating boilerplate language that could be used in most proposals or in a lot of scenarios, and then tailoring finally the actual fundraising appeals, the solicitation, tailoring those individual strategies for the potential contributor based on who they are and what you think they are going to be most interested in with your work.
And how about grant management? What are the challenges that the nonprofits are facing and how to solve them?
I think one of the biggest challenges in grant seeking and grant management is not recognizing that grant makers are real people and it's not just a transactional relationship. And so it takes a long time to develop trust and knowledge between you of finding a match. And so if you can figure out who is interested in the kind of work that you do, educate them about what you do, invite them to events, invite them to learn about your organization, give them opportunities to build an impression and trust of leadership within the organization and other staff and board within the organization, and then work collaboratively to figure out what the funder might be interested to support and write your proposal accordingly. If you're just sending out proposals blind, you're probably spending more time writing than and not raising the dollars that you need. So it's slow and there's an investment, definitely an initial investment, but if it's done thoughtfully, the results will be more impactful.
I love all your tips. Thank you. And
Thank
another
you.
area that's critical is also the board members. They are the main pillar of the organization. They are the ones that should be 100% involved in all areas, but many nonprofits just choose board members as convenient, as their convenience, but not for the role that they need to execute. What are the main problems you see on board member relationship and how to solve them?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. A lot of these challenges that you raise, they weave together. And so here's another example of knowing what you want to accomplish and then finding the folks that are a good fit for that, similar to what I was describing with fundraising. So first, figuring out what is the job of the board at the whole board level, at the individual board member level, and at the leadership level. And then what skills and experiences and relationships do you need in that group or by individuals in that group to be able to do that? And so that means creating a job description for the board that makes sense. And this could be done in collaboration with current board members. It can be done by staff leadership. Then coming up with a matrix that'll map out, here are the qualities that we need, here are the qualities we currently have, and then therefore here is our plan to get folks with those qualities onto the board. And so if you're in a much better position to align who you've got with what you need to happen. And there's got to be a real understanding of what is the general function of the board versus what is the general function of the staff, which ideally comes out in the job description. But just to give a very quick summary, the board is responsible for the governance of the organization, and the staff is responsible for executing the mission work. So that means the board should set broad policy. They should vote on the budget. They should hire and evaluate and set the salary for the executive director. Then the executive director or CEO and the staff are responsible for performing the mission work, for determining the details of financial management, for reaching out to community members. And the board can serve as wonderful volunteers, as ambassadors, but it's in support of the staff in that way, in addition to their larger governance responsibility. And then fundraising fits in there as well. So if they are responsible for the fiscal stability of the organization and they're ambassadors for the organization and they're helping the staff, every board member should be giving at a level that is generous for them. So if $50 is a big deal, then that's a wonderful gift for them. If $50,000 is a big deal, then that's a wonderful gift for them.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those information about board members and how to organize an efficient board member meeting.
That is a great question. So the board meeting is there for decision making and is also informational. and relationship building. So if your board meeting is all about the staff telling the board what the activities of the organization are, that's not fulfilling all of those roles, nor is it that fulfilling, emotionally satisfying for the people on the board. So I would think about what business you need to accomplish, what is board level business. So, approving the organizational budget, voting on new board members, deciding on a strategic plan, connecting them with the mission, maybe in a presentation or a volunteer opportunity, and having real thoughtful discussions. So having a mission moment, I've heard many consultants describe as that language of a mission moment is a really great way to emotionally connect and remind the board members of the work that's being done without just talking at them.
That's great. Thank you. And overall, after dealing with several nonprofits, you told me that you created a year program that will help nonprofits be more stable in all those 4 areas that we talk. Can you tell us a little bit about this program, what people will learn? And I know that you have 22 hours of classroom and also on one-on-one consulting. Can you explain better this program, this year-long program?
Yes, thank you for asking about that. It's called the Nonprofit Operations Workshop. It's launching this fall, and we will take 10 organizations in each cohort group and up to 2 people. So that is 20 total folks in the cohort program. And we'll move through monthly sessions to talk about nonprofit financial management, to talk through a range of topics around HR. We'll have a session about nonprofit legal issues. We'll talk about benefits. We will talk about professional insurance. And all of that'll be about 22 hours of classroom. There'll be a cohort group on Slack. There will be one-on-one consulting, 3 hours that the organizations can use with any of the team members, and then a lot of tools and templates. So they will get a comprehensive financial policies and procedures handbook that can be adapted for organizations that have a C3 and a C4, that have a PAC, that have different levels of experience and funding, budgets that can be expanded by department or used for grants, a lot of different models there. And for HR, there'll be an employee handbook model through an equity lens, lots of different forms that you can use. So lots of tools that can help an organization significantly increase how efficient and effective they are, how well they interact with each other, and how they're able to work with funders and other important decision makers.
So, as you know, those 4 areas that you help are not the core business of an organization. They are more focused always on the mission. So what is your opinion about co-sharing service? How nonprofits can access co-sharing service, for example, if they want someone helping them in HR and they cannot pay a full person to do recruitment. Do you have a solution on that? Can you introduce them to other nonprofits where they can share those costs? What is your point of view on this topic?
Yeah, I think that consulting services or other service providers can be really useful. And so in some cases, a shared service that you would hire can do things more efficiently than you can, because let's say it's a print shop and they have an entire staff that are able, and high quality printing machines that they can move through so much faster than you could in your printer in your office. So that'd be an example of faster and less expensive. You can also have services that provide a level of expertise that you don't have on your staff. And so hiring somebody like Big Change Consulting, you can very quickly get expertise in areas that might not be what you have, and you don't have to hire a full-time employee. It might be that it's a couple of hours a month. It could be a larger project where you want to have comprehensive financial policies and procedures, and you want it written by a team of folks that has expertise in nonprofit auditing and management and accounting, and you don't have that support on staff, and it would take you hundreds of hours to get it. Those are great opportunities to outsource to a partner organization that you could work with, to a consulting firm, or to some type of specific service provider. And we can help either with those services, or we can help make recommendations for some of those services that we found to be successful.
And do you think, you mentioned that during those months together with all those organizations, the 10 organizations that are going to participate on the training, is there any collaboration between those organizations that will happen? Is there any benefit in this area as well for nonprofits to join the program?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we are going to have a Slack group. And so Slack is a tool for folks who haven't used it before that has messaging individually between people or in topic areas. And so we will have the ability for participants to ask questions about budgeting and finance and HR and legal, and either we'll answer or we can connect them to somebody to help them, and folks can interact with each other. And so our training and client services coordinator has a PhD in education, has a master's in curriculum development, and we are working really hard to make each of these sessions really interactive and find opportunities for organizations to collaborate with each other so they can lean on each other over time. Well, we can provide some answers. A lot of what we can do is help make connections with folks to people who are experts and are the right fit for the right solution and right problem that they have at the time.
Thank you so much. I would like also to talk a little bit about the trainings that we offer here for team building. We have a self-assessment tool that we use called Triads, where you can identify the different type of personalities. And the idea is to really see the potential of your own employees and how to better use them on your organization and create a team building. So this team building, together with the training that she's offering here, will be a good fit for your organization if you want to achieve a high performance. Is there anything else, Judy, you like to add to the comment to our listeners about your program and how can you add value to nonprofits?
Thank you. First off, this is a great program, and I love the questions and the service that you're providing. So thank you so much for doing this. I think, being able to make connections, answer questions, and point people in the right direction so they can get what they want in a really efficient and effective way is a great value that we can provide. And then if we think that we can help at a deeper level, then we can talk further about where we might be useful, and organizations can decide if it would be beneficial for them and it's a good fit for them right now.
Yeah, sometimes I think executive directors, they wait a long time for them to find their knowledge by themselves and grow into this big, challenging environment. Absorbing all the knowledge you need to be an excellent executive director doesn't need to take you 5-10 years. You can shorten the period of learning how to be efficient with your nonprofit if you have the right people on your staff. Maybe you're not capable to hire internal employees, but you're capable to have a consultant just to accelerate. And I consider Judy a good accelerator for a nonprofit. That's why I invited her to be here on our podcast. And I hope you guys schedule at least a call with her to understand how she can even leverage your nonprofit to a different level.
That's a really great comment. When I was a nonprofit employee for 23 years, it took me probably until the very end of my last nonprofit employee job to realize that I didn't have to figure it out on my own, that there were other people that I could lean on. If I ran into a roadblock, it wasn't just a roadblock. And so when I switched over to doing consulting a couple of years ago, really saw the value in being able to collaborate and pull in new resources. I'm constantly learning myself now, even though I'm in more of a teaching role. I'm constantly learning new ideas and tools and angles and lenses. So, what I'm able to do and other consultants can do is bring together that experience that we have working with a lot of organizations and being specialists in a particular area. And so it helps exactly what you're talking about, Bettina, in terms of being able to shorten that learning curve so that executive directors can get the results that they're looking for faster, more efficiently, and potentially even less expensively.
Perfect. That's what I wish for all our listeners. So we're going to put all the information from Judy Siegel here on the description of this podcast. If you want to contact her, LinkedIn is a good option, but we will leave also the website. And I totally encourage you to schedule at least a one-on-one call so you can learn more how she can accelerate your nonprofit. And if you want to learn more about the self-assessment tool and how to build efficient teams, just contact us. The description of my information will be on the description of the podcast too. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate being here with you today.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been really, really wonderful.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom for Nonprofits. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews and suggestions for future show topics. If you have a question or a suggestion, please write to us at podcast@wity.tech. More resources are available for you at our website, wity.tech. And please join us in the Wisdom for Nonprofits group on LinkedIn. Wisdom for Nonprofits is copyright 2019 by Bettina Meyer-Flug and wity.tech. All rights reserved.